Welcome to YOUCANIC. Today here on YOUCANIC we have a 2012 Hyundai Sonata with the 2.4 motor and the HEV or the hybrid system. And we're going to go over how you would replace the Serpentine belt and the two tensioners on this belt. Here's your alternator or charging unit, and we've got this belt. We're going to go over how you would replace it, as well as a tensioner that's on this side and a tensioner that's on this side. And so there's two tensioners and the Serpentine belt, and we've got the small water pump belt. It'll all be covered in here. But before we go ahead and put anything in and do any work inside the engine bay, we need to deactivate the system, / we disconnect the negative battery cable for the 12-volt battery, and we also disconnect the hybrid battery or the fuse that controls that hybrid battery. I'll show you how that's done. So you come back here into the trunk, and you got this little cover, and we're just going to pull this cover. We're going to pull this tab up, and when we pull that tab up, we'll be able to pull the handle down and then pull this whole connector out. And we're going to set that aside. Now, you do not touch those two things together or touch anything in there. It could really hurt you. So now that we've got the battery disconnected from all the high voltage and the 12-volt battery that's in the trunk, you just disconnect that negative battery cable. Once those are done, then we give it some time to sit and make sure that everything has been de-energized. So we've had that time. It has sit, it's de-energized, and so now we will work on removing the belts. First, we're going to start with removing the small belt that runs for the water pump, and it goes from the crank to the water pump, and that's just a stretch belt. And I'll show you how that's done. Okay, so this is the belt that we need to remove, and this is called a stretch belt. And so we're going to put a 22mm socket on here, and with a little bit of an extension, and we're just going to turn it. And if you pull on the belt, you'll be able to get it to come up. We're just going to work it off from the water pump up there. There we go. So we've got the first stretch belt off. The car has been jacked up. It's supported on on jack stands, and the front tire removed, as well as this cover. And there was a little bar here, and that's all been moved out of the way so that we have easier access to do what we need to do. Here is just an idler pulley, and then we have the two tensioner pulleys up here. So I've gone ahead and undone the released the tension on both tensioners. There are pins in there that are holding the tension released. So with that tension released, now we can get the Serpentine belt off. Alright, so we're able to work the Serpentine belt off, and now we can remove it. And with that Serpentine belt off, now we can get to the process of removing the tensioners. And see, this tensioner we're not going to be able to undo without taking the pulley off. And so we're going to take that pulley off, and the other one, there is enough space there that this tensioner on the front can be removed without taking the pulley off. Now, the one thing you got to know about this pulley is this is a reverse thread pulley, so tighten is going to loosen it. So I'm going to take our 15. We got that pulley off. Now we should have enough space to get a socket on here and to be able to undo this bolt. And then we'll do the same thing with the other tensioner, and we'll remove both tensioners. Okay, so it's a 17. Okay, so we've got the bolt loosened. We're gonna need to take that tensioner out through the top, and then we'll loosen the other bolt for the other tensioner and remove that. So that's the one tensioner, and that's the tensioner that goes on the front side. And then we have the other tensioner that's on the back side, right down here. I'm gonna just pull it up here through the top, and we can be able to remove that tensioner there. And so that is the tensioners removed, as well as the serpentine belt in replacing your serpentine belt and tensioner. We are back ready to install the tensioners and the serpentine belt and the water pump belt back on our 2012 Hyundai Sonata with the 2.4 and the hybrid motor. Now, the hybrid motor 2.4 has they have dual tensioners, one that goes on the front and one that goes on the back, right? This one goes here on the front. Got the arrow, and so it sits in like this and goes on the front. And this one sits like this and goes on the back. So one thing you're going to want to make sure, so when we put these back in, there you've got this pin on the back on both of them. There is an aligning hole that this will go in on the block of the engine, and that we need to line that up so that when this bolt is tight, this is flush to that metal, and then this holds the tension, so when you release this tension pin, then the tension will be set where it needs to be. If you don't align this, it's not going to tighten up right anyway, but if you don't, then you won't get any of the tension that you need off of it. So we got to install these pulleys, or install these tensioners, and then we have to put this pulley back on. And this is a reverse thread, so we put this one. You just got to remember that there's a reverse thread on this one, so to tighten it, you go counterclockwise, unlike everything else where you go clockwise to tighten. It even has arrows that tells you which way they go to tighten. So we're going to take the first tensioner, which is the one that we got to put the pulley back on, and we're going to work it down through this hole, and make sure you leave you want to put the bolt in first, because otherwise there's not enough space to put the bolt in once it's down there. Okay, so we have it's flush on the engine block, and that little guide pin hole is lined up in there so that it will hold the base of the tensioner, so that when it's all released, it will provide the tension that is needed. We're going to get our 17mm socket on there to tighten that. Okay, so that one's good and tight. Now we'll need to put this pulley on. Like I said, that one's a 15, and we turn it counterclockwise to tighten this one. And the reason it goes counterclockwise is because when the belt rolls around that, it makes the pulley go counterclockwise. And so it's part of a safety feature so that your pulleys don't loosen while you're driving down the road. Okay, so that one's on good and tight, and now we can do the other one from down below. So we're going to install this one. Same thing. We see that smooth, that's where we got to get it on, and there is this pin on the back here where we take this pin on the back. Okay, so we got that lined up, it's in place, and now we're just going to tighten the number 17 bolt that holds the tensioner in place. Okay, we've got the two tensioners in place, the one right here on the back, the one on the front, and now we're going to route the belt up through there. We're going to go up and get it to go around the alternator. And then we'll work on getting it where else it needs to go. So we're around the alternator. So the belt's still a little bit, the new belts are stiff. We're going to just rotate the crank pulley. Right, so you've got your alternator and charging, which is a high power charger. You've got a tensioner on this side, a tensioner on this side, and we have an idler pulley right here. So we go rib side around the alternator, smooth side on the tensioner. Idler pulley here is rib side around the crank, and then the idler pulley is smooth side there. And that's how you get it all wrapped around there. Can be a little bit of a pain, may need to stretch a teeny bit of the belt to get it to go over, and then we'll release the tension. And once that's all done, then the last one is we have this small stretch pull belt that goes from the crank to the water pump, and we'll go over how we do those. Okay, so we've got the main belt, the serpentine belt. It's wrapped around all the pulleys where it needs to be. We now just need to release the tension, and then we'll be good to go there. You need a size 15 wrench to release this one. Want some leverage. Okay, so that's the one, and the front one is a 17, and the size 15 we go in the reverse order, so it would be counterclockwise to loosen that, or to remove it, and then the other one, you're going to just move it the way like if you were going to tighten the bolt. And then that way you can pull your pin out. And now both tensioners have been released. And now we'll go ahead and put our little stretch belt on. So wrap it around the water pump. Get it around the pulley here. And then get our 22 millimeter here. We got that to stretch around. You'll just want to make sure that the ribs are where they need to be on the water pump. Just go ahead. Good. So that's how you would finish up replacing your serpentine belt, tensioners, and the stretch pulley or stretch belt that goes around for your water pump, the crank and the water pump. Thanks for watching YOUCANIC, where you can be the mechanic.